All
All
right, good
right.
morning. Got it. All right, good morning, everyone. So my name is Fadi Habib. I see a lot of familiar faces. So hello to everyone. If you know who we are, we're Microsoft. We're part of your team. My introduction was 20 years experience as a technologist. Live in LA, California, 10 in financial industry and 10 in edtech services. And now I serve California, all the site customers and the County Office of Educations and multi-states as well on that. I'm excited because this is one of the many webinars we're going to have. And I'll put my email address in the chat for any kind of follow-ups between us and Soft Choice. We're always here to kind of support and serve everyone. Um, on that, I have two of the top tiers. I always, try to give the red carpet for my colleagues, but some of them actually wrote multiple books, and this is a good conversation to have with Q&As, and we can go side topics, anyone needs on that front, not only related to the Defender portal, anything related to Microsoft security stack. With this, I'll hand it off to Jeff.
Thank you, Fadi. Hello, everybody. And thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. Like Fadi said, my name is Jeff Chester. I am a security specialist on the Microsoft team. My sole focus is with our K through 12 and community college customers. So very familiar with the space and its challenges. I'll be kicking things off today and talking a little bit about the common, security challenges that our customers are facing, and how they're addressing those challenges with the Microsoft Defender suite of solutions. I'll then hand it over to my colleague, Michael Linehan, to dig a bit further into the technology, how it works, all via a demo. But feel free, like Fadi said, feel free to ask questions, post them in the chat. And for those that are interested in any type of follow-up discussion, we're happy to schedule that. Just put that in the chat as well. We can schedule directly with you. Michael, why don't I hand it over to you to introduce yourself, and then I can get things started.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Fadi. Great to meet all of you. Michael Linehan, Senior Security Solutions Engineer here at Microsoft. Been working with the education space here at Microsoft for almost 10 years. Prior to that, done a ton of stuff and experienced a lot of things from a consulting standpoint, and got to see the clouds actually build out and grow. So great to deep dive today into the Defender for Cloud side, and look forward to showing you some of the technology and some of the newest integrations that we have with our suites. So, and with that, I'll hand it over to Jeff.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Micah. Okay, so great. Let's kick things off talking a little bit about the continued kind of growth that we're seeing. We're continuing to see cloud and hybrid environments expand in today's IT infrastructure space. And IT leaders want to harness the power of AI and embrace cloud native services. So with 92% of organizations planning to boost their AI investment, it's pretty clear that AI is becoming a very key piece to organization strategies. Additionally, 70% of organizations are already leveraging cloud services, which highlights really the widespread adoption of cloud technologies. That being said, this shift does come with challenges that we're all aware of, highlighted by the continued increase in cloud security incidents. The complexity of managing security tools is also a big concern. Most organizations are averaging 10 plus different security tools, believe it or not, and that can lead to inefficiencies. So this really emphasizes the need for more of a cohesive security strategy that can adapt to the expanding attack surface in the cloud and hybrid environments. And really understanding these trends is crucial for developing an effective security measure as well as a plan. So we find that most of our customers are really looking to shift away from fragmented security visibility to a more unified, actionable insight type of environment. Here, we're highlighting how modern security teams can win by seeing really the full picture across their environment. Today's threats don't stay in one place. They move across things like identities, cloud resources, applications, and data. And really, what Defender does is it brings these signals together so teams aren't chasing alerts in different silos. So with this unified visibility across multi-cloud and hybrid environments, security teams can understand not just what is vulnerable, but where the risk lives and how it could be exploited. So this correlation across cloud, identities, applications, and infrastructure helps teams focus on what really matters. So a key focus area for our customers is having that ability to trace vulnerabilities back to the developer or the workload level. Instead of security being a downstream function, teams can provide actionable feedback to engineering, which really enables, faster remediation earlier in the life cycle, which is what we all want. By reducing the number of these disconnected and fragmented tools and integrating
Jeff, you're muted.
Jeff, yeah, sorry. Still mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I don't know how that happened. By reducing the number of disconnected tools and integrating, signals into a single experience, security teams can respond faster and more confidently. Fewer tools, better context, and ability to prioritize ultimately mean faster threat remediation and stronger outcomes for the organization. Okay, so Microsoft Defender for Cloud is designed to provide a comprehensive security platform across various different environments, including AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and your on-prem data center environments. It emphasizes the importance of unifying security throughout the entire application lifecycle, ensuring that security measures are integrated from code to runtime. The solution prioritizes the most critical risks, allowing organizations to focus their resources effectively. Additionally, it offers near real-time response to cloud threats, leveraging advanced Gen AI and threat intelligence to enhance protection. This proactive approach ensures that security is not just a reactive, but more, proactive or anticipatory in safeguarding applications from potential vulnerabilities. So overall, Microsoft's Cloud Native Application Protection Platform, or CNAPP for short, delivers a very robust code to runtime security, making it an important and vital tool for modern cloud environments. So with the Microsoft Defender for Cloud now really deeply integrated into the Defender portal, cloud security is no longer a separate experience. It becomes, part of how security teams already operate day to day. Instead of jumping between tools, teams can manage cloud and hybrid data center risk from the same place. They investigate threats across things like endpoints, identities, and applications. So this unified experience brings posture management and threat protection together. From Cloud Security Dashboard, teams gain a clear, comprehensive view of their environment, including assets, vulnerabilities, attack paths, secure score, as well as prioritized recommendations. So the goal is to help security teams quickly understand their exposure and focus on their risks that will have the biggest impact. Another key shift is centralized inventory. Defender now consolidates visibility across code and cloud resources across their cloud environments, as well as, again, into their private data center environments. And this eliminates blind spots and breaks down silos between cloud platforms and development pipelines, really giving teams consistent insight across their entire estate. So ultimately, integrating Defender for Cloud into the Defender portal means security teams can see and act on cloud risks and their own data center risks from one place. That drives faster decisions, better prioritization, and a more proactive approach to reducing risk across to hybrid and multi-cloud environments. So this is the last slide I'll go over, and then I'll hand it over to Mike to actually get into the demo and how it works. But organizations are increasingly realizing the importance of a unified security platform. that operate seamlessly across multi-cloud and multi-pipeline environments, tackling both proactively and runtime protection. Proactive security measures are essential for identifying and mitigating key risks before they escalate. So key components include cloud security posture management, also referred to as CSPM, and AI-driven risk remediation, which leverage advanced technologies to enhance security posture. Runtime protection is equally critical, focusing on real-time threat detection and response across various domains such as APIs, servers, as well as containers. The mention of both agent-based and agentless protections really shows the flexibility in deployment, catering to diverse infrastructure needs. Additionally, the integration of security controls within the platform ensures a cohesive approach to safeguarding assets, making it easier for organizations to manage their security landscape effectively. So before I hand it off to Micah, really the key message here is that unified approach, going from siloed, oftentimes disparate technologies to improve your security posture, to more of a cohesive, unified approach that make things more efficient and easier for defenders to defend themselves against the attackers. All right, Micah, let me hand it over to you for the demonstration.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. So as we dig into this, this hopefully should be familiar to you as the Microsoft Defender dashboard, and we thought it was really important to show how it's all integrated, how it all works together, and for really kind of one of the first times ever, we now have not only endpoints, identities, applications that we're used to seeing in Microsoft 365, but the cloud aspect as well. And so this is now integrated, fully capable when we look at it from an overview and an exposure standpoint. We can look at the initiatives that we have. We can see our cloud resources, both in Azure, in GCP, in AWS, on-prem devices. You know, it's bringing it all together. And so we can look at our initiatives. Obviously, our target score for cloud is not where we have and where we want it to be with, you know, endpoints, identity, and applications. And we can go ahead and look at initiatives, whether it's CIS, ASR, or Zero Trust. We can go into quite a few more of those, and device exposure. And from an attack surface standpoint, you kind of get these three buckets as we look at protecting the environment, right? You know, attack path summaries, we'll dig into some of the profiling, what it actually looks like here as we kind of move through it. And one of the cool things that I'll kind of start out with and show is, you know, as we're all pretty familiar with, you know, the most important kind of section here, in my opinion, as we're starting to dig into is what's actually happening in my environment, what are the incidents that are occurring in my environment, and we can actually start digging into all of these components. And more importantly, let me look at, you know, the source and the classification of what we have here, and dig in and show, you know, where it's coming from. So service detection sources here, we can add that in if I can actually click add. And we'll go ahead and actually select Defender for Cloud. And so now you can see here within a couple of clicks, obviously, that we're aggregating and not only integrating that with all of the other alerts that you're used to seeing, identity, devices, assets, you know, mailbox alerts, all of that coming together. But we see incidents that are, you know, leveraging and truly a part of this full orchestration and your full organization in that attack story, right? So, you know, we see databases that are a part of this. We see mail messages that are coming in from a compromise standpoint. And you can see that really spreading across your whole environment, right? So when we say single pane of glass, now with Microsoft Defender for Cloud, it truly is. because we're bringing in not just what's happening in your productivity, your collaboration platform, what's happening with your identities, but what's happening with your firewalls, what's happening with, these cloud assets that you have that you've brought in, or what's going on with that database that's on-prem. Once we have the components set up and integrated, we can actually go in and look at this and allow you to dig into some of that more comprehensively. So from a high level, right, we can see what's happening. We can look at the evidence. We can look at the activities. We can view the alerts. We can see where it's coming from, what they're trying to hit, just like we always can, but now with even more extensibility into the infrastructure itself, not just the cloud components that we typically see from Defender and the integrations that are there. So as I kind of filter over and look at, obviously we can do the same with the alert side, but as I filter over and kind of flip into the infrastructure themselves and we start looking at the assets, you'll now see, just like we had kind of on that overview page, we have our devices, we have our identities, we have our applications. We now have AI agents in our organization. We can click at and dig into that, as it's so important to look at and see, hey, we've got GCP, AWS, Copilot, Foundry. We can look at the agents themselves, see that they're protected, see that they're covered. And then with the Defender for Cloud side, we can really look at all of the assets that we have. I unfortunately don't have all my assets covered yet because we haven't fully rolled it out in this demo environment, but we can see what we are covering, what's partially covered, analyze, understand those gaps, look at recommendations, look at vulnerability and criticality levels. I'm going to hop over here into some containers and click into just this AKS cluster. And really kind of look at the criticality level of it in the environment, what it's actually looking like. More importantly, let's look at it and see what it actually looks like integrated with our organization, right? We can see, it's hitting public websites, diagnostics. We can see the agent pools. We can see incidents and alerts that are associated with it. Luckily, there's none in here that are at least high or medium. We can look at security recommendations as a part of the attack surface reduction side, looking at, hey, this is a pretty high alert and risk level of, there's, object and secret objects that should be restricted here. We should probably protect that. Let's go ahead and manage that and go ahead and start remediating these. I can also look at the attack paths, and we'll dig into some of these a little bit further, especially this one here. But, being able to allow the lateral movement in the environment, this makes it pretty critical for you to be able to move laterally, exploit within here, and, understanding the vulnerabilities that we have, not just from a user standpoint, but within our infrastructure is extremely important. So, let's look at it, how it can gain control of the device. You can move laterally here and delete resources in the cluster. Well, that's definitely not good, right? And so as we look at, execution tactics and from the MITRE attack frameworks that are here, we're able to identify what's actually going and could occur within the environment. Luckily, we don't have any alerts saying that this is being exploited, but it's something that we should probably go in and remediate, right? So that we don't have that. And then again, moving into not just what's happening with this AKS cluster here, but looking at the namespaces that are here, the services that are here, the service accounts, what workloads is it integrated with. You get a really good snapshot of actually what's happening from an inventory standpoint and where it sits in your environment. So really mapping that all out, and that's just simply getting it connected, getting it integrated with the Defender for Cloud components, and being able to understand what's here. And we can go in and we can dig into that. We can dig into our DevOps organization, and this is a really popular one that we're seeing a lot within the education space. I know Jeff and I and Fadi and I have had conversations around how are we better protecting our GitHub repository or our DevOps repositories. Well, that's Defender for Cloud, right? And so let's look at that and go into, looking at research, understanding what's happening here. We can open Again, another asset page, see the mapping, look at the code to runtime components that we have here. And luckily there isn't in the demo environment, but we can see if there's any incidents that are here as well. Look at our security recommendations for attack surface reduction, those kind of components of, hey, let's make sure that we're making sure that the requesters are not allowed to approve their own pull requests. Some self-attestation there that probably should be in place, but making sure that you're hardening the environment, taking those things into account, looking at things like the attack paths, like I said before. Luckily, this looks pretty secure outside of the self-approvals within those pull requests. But being able to really dig into what you have and what you're looking at, whether it's DevOps, data, containers, virtual machines themselves, serverless infrastructure. If we have Azure Logic apps running, we have Metaverse and Lambda functions that are here that we can go in and look at and make sure that we're digging in and that it's as secure as possible, right? Whether it's our own published web apps, low code, no code components, all of that kind of being integrated here and being investigatable and being able to look at that environment. And there's obviously, when we start looking at all of our assets, it becomes kind of really crazy when we start understanding everything that we have. Here I actually have it called out and I already filtered it, which is kind of spoiling the fun part. But if I wanted to go in here and add a filter to the organization and look at the CVEs that I have, and say, hey, I'm really concerned about this specific CVE and the escalation that's here, I can very quickly just dump that in and see all of the environmental components that we have within these virtual machines and VM clusters that are vulnerable to this, right? It's a really high severity. We've seen some of it in our environment. Luckily, if I was to dig in and see that it's actually not being exploited in our environment, but it's still crucially important that I patch this vulnerability for these Linux devices.
Hey, Micah, there's a request in the chat that says, could you touch on cloud apps with Google Workspace?
Yeah, we can. It's the cloud app discovery and the cloud components actually go through Defender for Cloud Apps. And I can dig into that quickly here. And so if we go to our cloud app component, we can look at either the application governance, we can look at the cloud discovery here and look at the cloud app catalog that's here as well. That all gets aggregated in to the incidents, alerts, and hunting. As you can see here from an app governance standpoint, you can see I've got Google integrated. I can look at the activity feeds and look at what we're doing. Obviously we're brokering and proxying that connection through Azure Active Directory so that we have session control capabilities. If I wanted to look at the activity log, I can dig in here as well, view what's actually happening. Again, this is the investigation components that are here. Let's add a filter like Google Workspace, bring that into here. And there's not anything in here from an activity feed standpoint, since we don't actively monitor that from a demo standpoint. But here's where I'd be able to see the user experience and what's going on, just like we do with, all of the components here from a logon standpoint, the assessments components, all of the activities. I can select users, filter those components. This is really the raw data feed from an activity log that we have coming in. And we'd be able to see that within the Google Workspace standpoint, within AWS, Box, Dropbox, really all of these applications. This demo environment, unfortunately, doesn't have any activity on the Google side, but you can see what that would look like. The nice part is within that activity log, that filters in from a unified standpoint right into not only the exposure management side, but incidents and alerts. So I could go in here, if we had activity happening on the Google side, you would see that it would come in through Defender for Cloud Apps, and you'd actually see, hey, we're seeing, anomalous activity over here, and some of those components that are there. So a lot of the activity feeds and capabilities that we have, we would have to stand up and actually do work themselves on the Google side, but happy to, if you are an existing A5 customer, happy to dig in and show you what that looks like once you get the API connection stood up in your environment. So Justin, for your question, if you have the A5 components or even wanted to start a trial and dig into what that looks like on the Google side, I'd be happy to do that because you have an environment where we can view the activity on the Google Workspace side. So, and that's really for anybody on the call that wants to dig into that. We've been working quite a bit with a few agencies and institutions, not just in California, but across the US, to dig into that from a protection standpoint, as well as looking at, what's actually occurring in their environment, setting up the alerts, doing those investigations and components that are there. So from that standpoint, we can dig into those assets. We can look at the containers and the one thing that I'll kind of hop into next is if we actually hop down to cloud security, right? So Defender for Cloud, extremely important here as we see our additional protections, whether we've got JFrog, GCP, AWS. From an infrastructure standpoint, we can look at actually what's happening here. We can look at our security score for our cloud components, and we're working on improving that. We can look at our security recommendations. We can look at our threat detections. Obviously, I can go right in. I can view these alerts. I can filter and look at actually what's happening. I can look at risk level. Obviously, we've got some critical misconfigurations. I'll show you where to identify those here in a couple minutes. But also as well, digging into data, sensitive data information. So this isn't just pulling in the Defender side. Obviously, if we have Purview configured properly and integrated here, we can look at sensitive information within object storage, databases that are managed. So it's really kind of coming all together into a unified hunter and hunting capabilities component that's there. When we're seeing the additional capabilities that we have, from a containers, AI, API, DevOps, CIEM, and looking at kind of some of those capabilities. So when I kind of dig into this, I'm going to, again, I kind of showed you some of the assets and capabilities. I'll pull up some of these high alerts here and kind of show you what that looks like as we dig in. Obviously there's some pretty high alerts and the detections within AI applications and even lateral movement, being able to surface that on, hey, we have GPT-4o, looks like they're trying to go in here and phish attempt against one of the applications themselves. I don't know if you are familiar at all with some of the components that we've seen within AI models and some of the capabilities of the threat actors today building in and compromising a user set and then using the AIs that you have connected to your identities to try and phish or exfiltrate information. That's one of the concerns that a lot of organizations have within AI and rolling it out in the organization. You're able to actually go in and gain visibility into that. We can look at the activity details. We can look at recommendations for how to remediate. I can go into some of the other components here. If I dig into the data security posture management side with this capability, I could actually see what the prompt itself was that they were trying to do. We can see obviously here the correlation and the URLs that we have that we want to protect or the similarity that triggered the alert. So we can go in and quickly remediate that, clean that up as a part of the alert within that AI model. So, click on another one here. Obviously, malicious file upload to a storage account happens way more than we'd think. As organizations and threat actors understand where things are stored, how things are managed, being able to see that, hey, if I put this this malicious payload here, this virus test file in this case, in this storage location, I can kind of circumvent the natural M365 and the Defender components. Well, Not really anymore, right? Because we're able to monitor that storage account. We can see that that's malicious. We can go ahead and remediate that, purge that component out, and we're gaining that visibility that we have in there. So when we dig into some of the security recommendations, which we'll kind of pivot to next, we can see within exposure management, we have vulnerability management. We can look at the overview itself. Pretty traditional view of what we have from an endpoint standpoint of, hey, we've got certificates, we've got user activity, and we recommend updating Chrome because there's a CVE that's out there. By the way, if you've never kind of known what this is on the threat side, the bug is a known CVE or exploit. The bullseye means it's being exploited in your environment. So kind of always like to highlight that within the environment here of, hey, here's how many exposed devices you have that are vulnerable to this CVE because Google Chrome's out of date, or there's an OpenSSL vulnerability. This doesn't necessarily have a CVE that's associated here, but nonetheless, that there's a vulnerability there that you want to update. Chromium, again, Microsoft Edge runs on Chromium, so it's susceptible to some of those same CVEs, giving you those threat intelligence, threat insights. But we do the same thing here on Defender for Cloud. We can pull up those CVEs, as you saw earlier. I had the vulnerability in the CVE pulled up for this one, for remote code execution on the Samba on the Linux side. And then, we can view all the vulnerabilities if we really want to dig into it, and kind of looking at everything that's happening within the organization for our cloud resources, right? So, hey, we see it coming through time and time again. The high vulnerability scores, the executions and 0 days that are coming across as a part of that, being able to protect that for your organization. It's also important to know what exposed assets you have and how that interacts with what's actually happening in your environment. And I know a lot of organizations try and get to the point of being able to take that CVE and make it actionable. Well, with Defender for Cloud and the Microsoft Defender platform, not only do we do that for like the endpoints, third-party applications that are on those endpoints and devices, core infrastructure components, but we're doing that with the Defender for Cloud components. So whether it's, again, in AWS, in GCP, in Azure, on-prem, we're able to associate these and actually show you the affected resources. We can show you the exposed assets. As you can see, I can dig into this as well. I can configure settings. I can go right into Azure and start reconfiguring some of those components if I need to remediate it. Look at effective software that's happening on here. Obviously, Python for Linux is a part of this CVE, and that's what's actually running on that machine, right? So when we look at it from a vulnerability management standpoint, really, really easy to hop in here, see what's happening in your environment, start cleaning up and remediating, whether it's exposed assets. We look at inventory of what we have, software inventory, vulnerable components, OpenSSL issues and the devices themselves. So these are how you actually go in and clean up and build out that secure score. As well as popping in and looking at the remediation side here. Obviously, these are a bunch of components that we have that are not only from a software update component for obviously the endpoints, but there's additional vulnerabilities that we actually look at, we integrate into here to go ahead and protect that. So, so when we look at the overall components here, again, getting into our CVEs, looking at our, exploitable and have fix and, being able to remediate those. It's important to look at that. Look at those recommendations that you have. Look at vulnerable virtual machines, vulnerable containers, DevOps environments. So if we click into our VMs, it'll let me click on there. We'll go containers. Again, this gets into that cloud inventory, popping you back over there. We can look at components that are here. We can start adding filters. We can look at criticality level, defender coverage. If we could say, hey, it's not covered or partially covered, we can go ahead and identify those, make sure they're rolled out. If we hop over on the VM side here, we can look at and see, hey, we've got some that aren't covered. We've got some that are partially covered. We've got some that are fully covered, but then we also have some that are, very high from a criticality standpoint. We can dig into that. We can open the asset page, look at our security recommendations, update OpenSSL, pretty high alert. Again, I can go ahead and hop right in and start managing that virtual machine, making sure that, you're protecting the organization, from the vulnerabilities that are here. One of the more popular components that I see and I actually kind of enjoy digging into is the attack paths standpoint. And if we look at just overall, all assets, and kind of looking at some of the sensitive data here on the AWS side. Let's open up this asset. Again, seeing how it interacts. Looking at it from an incident standpoint, this one should have an, nope. Man, we've got a really clean environment, but hey, let's look at security recommendations. Again, making sure that read access should be removed, enabling, blocking public access at the bucket level. That's kind of really how you can go in and quickly understand what's happening in your environment, cleaning up components that are here, digging into that, and being able to protect your organization. So let me dig into some initiatives here as well. You can see, obviously, if you're making it important for you to, say, hey, we need to really get on our SaaS security components. You can start tracking that and managing that through this initiative, as well as going in on the cloud security side. I'll go ahead and click on these top recommendations from an initiative and a cloud initiative standpoint. Let's look at the whole cloud infrastructure here from an attack path standpoint, because I haven't had a lot of luck digging into the individual ones. But we have, vulnerabilities of lateral movement to critical Azure and Azure Key Vault, right? Because what are they typically going after? Keys and access when they're moving laterally, so they can do privilege escalation, they can exploit, and they can exfiltrate. So, going in here, looking at devices with, allowing lateral movement, I can click in here, look at the attack story. I can also look at the recommendations on how to remediate it. And in this case, it's a pretty critical vulnerability that, they're going to go ahead and say, hey, this user or the user has access to this key vault. And, if they gain access to that identity or they gain access to this device itself, they can go ahead and exploit and be able to pull that information right out from that desktop, right? Because we're able to see that there's a cookie there, the user account's associated with it. So, in this use case, I would go ahead and make sure that this device itself is monitored if we have to maintain that, but maybe pull that out and pull the user cookie off of it, refresh that authentication token. Make sure that Bigley Lewis is, since he's a high component user and an exposure standpoint, that he's at least part of privilege access management when it comes to accessing the key vault itself, that you have proper identity management and PIM and PAM implemented for those components. And that's recommendations that you would have as you kind of move through this, right? Internet exposed Azure VM. I know that we probably all have a few of them, whether they're in Azure, AWS, or GCP. You can dig into these, look at what's actually happening, what's the recommendations here on how to harden it, and dig into what we have and say, hey, does this really need to be internet exposed? Or, oh, did I accidentally forget to disable, the RDP port on that VM after I was done configuring it, right? So a lot of these things, again, if you go into kind of like the overview, you'll see like misconfigurations. Some of these are misconfigurations. Some of them are, hey, you know, internet exposed APIs. Do we have to have that exposed? You know, can I make it private? Or did I just forget to secure it, right? So you have really good visibility here, kind of digging through and integrating there for those components and being able to protect from that standpoint. So obviously important information, aggregating that all together, but kind of bringing it all back to the beginning. The nicest part about that is when we're digging into the incidents, when we're digging in and actually doing hunting and creating SOAR policies, orchestration, automation, detection rules, and alerting. We do that across the whole entire environment now with Defender for Cloud. And we have the ability to do that as it becomes a part of what we're doing across the organization. And the full integration is truly giving you now a single pane of glass with automation and orchestration integrated. And we can stack Security Copilot right on top of that and start doing those investigations, doing that advanced hunting, building out queries, doing what we need to from a Copilot standpoint, and you know, and all with natural language. So, and with that, I'll kind of turn it open. I saw a couple of questions, but yeah, if you have any other questions or anything else, I'm happy to dig into all of that. But that's really the Defender for Cloud integration into the Defender suite. So not just Microsoft Defender as a part of your A5 and what you're used to hunting, how you do investigations, but now bringing all of your infrastructure together in a unified dashboard so that you can truly hunt and remediate and protect it, you know, as single pane of glass as possible.
Looks like we have another question here, Micah. Is Defender for Endpoint required to get some of the logs you showed us?
Yes, it is. So if you're looking at some of the attack surface reduction components, or like we dig into like our attack paths, or even just looking at like the vulnerabilities and you see the devices and the CVEs, this is all coming from Defender for Endpoint. And so as we dig into the vulnerabilities, the applications, the inventories that are here from a software standpoint, this is all pulling from Defender for Endpoint. Obviously, it's agentless on Windows devices, and there is an actual integration there and an agent for Android and iOS, as well as on the Mac side as well, has an agent for it too, and Linux. But if you have a third-party Defender for Endpoint or third-party MDR solution or MDE solution, an EDR solution, you can actually put the Defender for Endpoint in a passive mode to gain this telemetry. It just doesn't do remediation. So if you're using CrowdStrike or Carbon Black, or pick your EDR solution, and you have A5 licensing that comes with Defender for Endpoint, you can put it in a passive mode, turn that sensor on the Windows devices, and gain this level of telemetry and investigation capabilities. You just can't do remediation. That would have to come from the other EDR that's in an active state. We have a lot of customers that do that to get a feel for it as they pilot the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and then they just turn it to active as they remove the other EDR solution, or run both just because they want the telemetry. They're using it for purview and some of the compliance capabilities that are there to protect the endpoints. But yes, it does require the Defender for Endpoint to get this telemetry on those devices, or Defender for Cloud on the server side. Great question.
So I also just want to point out to Justin and Nicholas that requested the further deep dive on Defender for Cloud Apps for Google Workspace. I just put in the chat my email address. If you guys want to just shoot me an email, I can work with you on getting that particular kind of one-on-one meeting scheduled. And Roy, for your Defender or your question on Defender for Endpoint, let us know, if you have any follow-up questions there, or if Micah's response made sense and answered your question fully. All right, any other questions based on what we showed you today? All right, looks like looks like your answer made sense to Roy, Micah.
Great.
All right, Fadi, we'll
Yeah,
turn it back
all
over to
right.
you.
Yeah, well, we can just wrap it up. Shreen, if there's anything else, how we close it, but everybody has our emails. Jeff put his email address there, and I'll put mine right here. We can do any kind of follow-up.
Okay, yes, thank you. But we'll close it up a little bit early. I just would add that we have recorded this, so I will make it available to site. Crystal Ibarra is on the call, your site representative, and she will make sure that it gets posted and distributed to you if you guys want to rewatch anything on the video. And I did take note of the recommendation for a subject. We only have 2 webinars for site this coming year. This being the first, and we have one more, so we will take that into consideration. And perhaps we also have the CAMSA office hours that are on the 3rd Wednesday of every month, and that could potentially be a topic for one of them. So continue to follow up, continue to contact us or your reps if you need any additional assistance or any custom presentations or conversations. We'd be glad to assist. So thank you from Soft Choice. Thank you, Microsoft, for presenting today, and thank you, Site, for your partnership. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.